Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about season 3 of Netflix's Master of None. Now, I'm a pretty big fan of Aziz Ansari. I'm a fan of Master of None the first 2 seasons. I'm a fan of his comedy. So I was really looking forward to this, even though I knew that his involvement was, I don't want to say minimal, because he's still very much involved, just not on screen. It's 5 episodes. They run a variety of runtime, somewhere between, like, I think the shortest one is like 20 minutes and the longest one's like 55 minutes, something in that range. 20, 25, 30, 50, 55. That's about the runtime of the 5 episodes. So you're looking at about 3 hours or so of content. They have, I think, 3 or 4 minutes of credits at the end. So yeah, you're looking at about 3 hours of content. Aziz appears in both the first and the third episode briefly. He's in one scene in each episode. The scene that he's in the first episode is kind of wild, but and really needed for that episode and for this series. But I just kind of want to get into how I felt about this season, because it's so dramatically different from the first 2. The first 2 were very kind of like wide and sprawling. You know, you got New York City, you got Aziz running all over the place, all sorts of things happening. I think in season 2, it's been a while, because it's been like 4 years, something like that. I think he spent some time in Italy, and it's so wide and sprawling and busy, and it feels like modern day life and dating in the big city. This is the complete opposite. It's confined, it's small, it's secluded. The entirety of the show, I mean the season, I should say, takes place essentially within this cabin where Lena Waithe's character Denise is with her wife Alicia. And before I go on, just to point out, this season, all of this season is about these 2 characters. It's not about Aziz. Like I said, he appears twice, but it's about these 2 and their relationship. And you know, like I said, it's so scaled down from what we see in seasons 1 and 2. You spend well, for one, the aspect ratio is different. Kind of like, it's not completely like in that box format. Like, I think if you watch my video on The Lighthouse, that movie, that one was very like in that boxed format, whereas this is not quite there, but not widescreen either. And the camera's very stationary, right? So like, you'll have the camera and you'll have characters. Well, I can't even say characters, because really I don't think there's any moment where there's more than 3 characters on the screen at one time. And mainly it's either 1 or 2 most of the time. But you will still have characters moving in and out of the frame. And you'll have the camera just sitting there. And I think my biggest problem with this season is that it's boring. And it's boring because I see what Aziz was trying to do, and Aziz directs every episode, by the way. I see what Aziz was trying to do, but at the end of the day, when you put it out there, if it's not entertaining, it's not gonna work. And there's very little entertainment value in this season, and I think a lot of that comes from his directorial style, which ironically is responsible for some of the best parts of the season as well. So like you could tell that he has an eye. You know, he frames things very particularly. Like I said, you got characters moving in and out of the screen. I mean, in and out of the frame. It has a very homey look almost. Like it feels like a home video almost is what it feels like. A home video from like the 90s, when you would have that old giant camera and you pull out that big tape. For those of you who are old enough to remember that, it feels like that. And the problem with that is, if you continue to have movement, and I don't mean that in a literal sense, I mean that just from a figurative sense too, like, you know, movement along with the story, or moving the story along, I should say. When you have that, those sorts of things are less noticeable. But what Aziz does that really tries my patience in this season is he spends far too much time on one shot or in one scene with very little to take away from that scene. And you know what I would compare it to is, if you guys have seen Family Guy, there's a ongoing gag where Peter Griffin hits his knee on the ground and he goes, and he does that for a really long time. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's funny at first, and then you go, oh, this is going on kind of long, and then it's going on so long that it becomes funny again. But what Aziz does is he spends a lot of time on a shot, right? So you think, okay, you have time to sit there and go, why is he showing me this? Okay, now I get it. Okay, now this is going on too long. And I don't need 45 seconds of just one shot of one thing. Like there's a shot in I think it's the final episode or it's the second to last episode where Alicia is sitting in a laundromat and there's music playing. And of course, there's a whole lot of weight to this scene, even though all it is just a shot of her just sitting in a laundromat, looking depressed and music playing. But we don't need that shot for 5 minutes to understand what you're trying to tell us. And I think that's where Aziz might have went a little bit too far with it. And this happens several times throughout the course of the series. And I mean, throughout the course of the season, I should say. And one of the things that, sometimes it works. There's times where in the first episode where I thought, okay, why are we on this shot for this long? This is not interesting. But then that shot comes back later. And it exists to kind of show the contrast between what these two characters' life was like at that time versus what it's like now. And I get that. But again, at the end of the day, even if I understand what you're trying to do, what you're trying to pay homage to, what you're trying to portray, the showing off the flair, not flair, because that's a little bit dramatic, but showing off what you can do behind the camera, all of that is fine if it's still entertaining. But when you do all these things and you linger on these shots and there's long periods of silence and it's to make this point of these two characters, their lives being mundane, their lives being boring, you feel trapped in their relationship because of how the camera is framed. I mean, because of how the shots are framed and the camera positioning and the home video nature of it, you feel confined within their relationship. So I get that. But at the end of the day, I don't need it for 45 seconds to understand what you're trying to tell me. And it gets to a point consistently where shots, scenes linger just far too long. And it's like, okay, I got the point 45 seconds ago. I don't need to, like, now I'm bored. And the first episode does this a lot. Over the course of its 50 or so minute runtime, there's several moments where it lingers on a shot or on a scene and it's meant to convey something to us. And I get it fairly quickly. And then I'm like, okay, now we're still sitting here on this scene. And then it's like, okay, here's a shot of the room with nothing in it. Here's a shot of another room with nothing in it. Here's a shot of outside. And it's like, okay, like, am I at a photography exhibit or am I trying to watch a television program that's telling me about these two people's relationship? So, at the end of the day, it's tough for me to recommend this season because there's a lot of good moments. There's some very powerful moments. There's some sad moments, and there's a lot of things that are worthwhile for viewing in this. But at the end of the day, it's tough to recommend because it's tough to get through. It's just really boring at times. And even when you understand what Aziz is trying to do, it still doesn't make it any less entertaining. Because I might go, oh, okay, I see why we're lingering on this shot. We're still lingering on it. Still lingering. So, it's just one of those things where it's like, I feel like Aziz was feeling himself a little bit too much with this season, trying to do a lot, a little bit up his own ass a little bit. Sorry. And I feel like this would have been better served as maybe like a 2-hour movie where you trim out some of that fat. And it doesn't even have to be where you have to get rid of scenes or get rid of moments. It's just like, if you just cut some of these shots down in duration, you're going to lose like half an hour. So it's like, I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff that I feel like could have been done differently to help make it a little bit easier to strap in for this ride. Whereas a lot of the time it just kind of feels like you're just sitting there like, okay, all right, I get it. And then you get like, 5 minutes of forward progress on the plot. And then you're like, all right, well, that was not worth the 50 minutes of boredom that I just experienced, but okay. So, and then, like I said, Aziz comes in that first episode, breathes life into it with his character. I've missed seeing Aziz. I haven't seen Aziz since probably season 2 of Master of None. So, I've missed seeing Aziz. It was nice for him to be on camera, but I'm a little disappointed. I respect Aziz Ansari a lot as far as like his abilities, as far as in front of and behind the camera. I respect what he does, but it's just, at the end of the day, I can run off for you guys all the different kinds of things that I felt like he was trying to do, that he was trying to accomplish, what this shot means, what that shot means. Sorry, my leg itched. What this shot means, what that shot means. And at the end of the day, if it's not entertaining, it's hard for me to recommend it. And I find it difficult to think of how anyone could derive a satisfactory amount of entertainment from this to give 3 hours of your time to it. It's just not that. There's just not that much there. And even now, having walked away from it and I'm done with it, I'm not looking back on it like, oh, this was good, that was good. It was just like, okay, well, I'm done with that now. And that's it. If this was something that was released week to week, I probably wouldn't have watched it after the first episode, if I'm being honest. So, unfortunately, not a big fan of season 3 of Master of None. There's a whole lot of great stuff going on here, but at the end of the day, the entertainment value is incredibly low. Lena Waithe is decent in front of the camera. Her co-star, I forget, I think her name is Naomi Acker. She did an excellent job, especially when you watch episode 1 and put that up against, like, I think it was like episode 3 or something like that, either 2 or 3. When you put those two performances up against one another, it's like, wow. But yeah, at the end of the day, the entertainment, you don't get enough out of it to justify how much you put into it. And I think at the end of the day, when it comes to TV and film, that's really the be all end all how we determine whether or not something is worth our time. It's like, okay, if I give you 2 hours of my time if it's a movie, or say 10 hours of my time if it's a season of a television show, am I going to walk away from that feeling like that time was well spent? And I feel like for all of the artsy fartsy shit that Aziz does in this season, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. The 3 hours that you're going to spend with it, you're not going to walk away from that feeling like it was 3 hours well spent. You're going to walk away from it feeling like it was about 20, 30 minutes well spent. And when it comes to that, I can't really recommend it. So, and this is coming from a fan of the show too. So, I kind of rely on you guys to trust my opinion and say, hey, if Mike says it's not good, we're not going to fuck with it. Mike says it's great, we're going to fuck with it. And there might be people who are like, oh, I love Master of None, and Mike's telling me this season isn't good. Trust me, it's unrecognizable from the first 2 seasons. It's an entirely different show. And it's called something like Master of None Presents Moments in Love. Like, they're trying to like make it not be Master of Love. So I think because it's so radically different, they don't want to tie it to the first 2 that closely. But at the end of the day, it says Master of None in the title. It's got Lena Waithe. It's got Aziz Ansari. It's fucking Master of None. Call it what you want. So, yeah, I love the first 2 seasons and wasn't a big fan of this. It was pretty dull. So if you're like really hoity-toity, artsy-fartsy film guy like myself, I went to college for film, but even then, all it did was serve me to go, I get what you're doing here. And then 5 minutes go by and I'm like, I still get it. Like, so we can move on to the next thing now. And that's just not entertaining. If that's not entertaining for me, that's definitely not going to be entertaining for your casual viewer who's not looking at it through the same lens that I am, who doesn't have the background. I sound like I'm bragging, but who doesn't have the background of, I'm familiar with this type of, with the auteur that he's paying homage to, or I'm familiar with the strategy behind this shot, or all of these things, right? If I'm familiar with those things and I still didn't like it, it's really tough for me to say, hey, watch this, you're gonna like it. So that's it for this episode right now. I don't know why I call this an episode. This isn't an episode. That's the end of this video right now. I'm a little off still. If you guys watched my Mayor of Easttown video yesterday, I had a really sore throat. I've been coughing all day, and I'm still kind of recovering from that. I had a crazy headache this morning. I'm just recording this video. It's probably like 4 o'clock. I'm just recording this video, and I started watching Master of None at like 10 a.m. But it was like this morning has been such a shit show that I haven't really been able to wrap my head around everything. So I'm still a little off, but that's probably why I called it an episode. My mind's not all there, but that's the end of this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.